Hello and welcome to week 5 of CSC 565 for the summer 2012. Before I sort of overview what we're going to do today and the kinds of things you'll be beginning to take a look at with your projects, I just want to mention that for many of you and for all of you who are doing a project that somehow relates to what's happening here on campus at CUW, I'm going to have you communicate about your project with my student worker, Daniel. The reason for that is, this is really going to help you bring your product into sharper focus. What you're going to do is I want you to send an email message to him. I'll provide a link for you online. He needs to be able to understand your project and what it's all about. He may be asking you questions about the product and the process also. Now, while he may know the answers to many of these questions, I've sort of instructed him to play dumb, if you will, and ask questions from the very basic to as complex as it needs to be there. What this will do is it will really allow you this dialogue between my system administrator, and he's a student worker, Daniel, and yourself. That will help sharpen and bring into focus your product, I think, a lot better. As we're moving on to the design phase here, I think you'll find this extremely helpful. He needs to be able to understand the project, and I've told him that he may be asked to recreate your product also. So the documentation that you produce will be looked at not only by me, but also by my undergraduate student worker. Any system administrator here is probably going to have to work with your specific product. It's something that goes along with our environment. It's something that's going to happen here at CUW on our servers or networks or clients. So somebody else besides me and you needs to understand it, and this is the way that's going to be accomplished. So again, be looking for that. I may have to either send you a mail message individually or renumber the assignments on there or something. But I'm going to ask my sysadmin Daniel to communicate with you about the product also. At this point in time then, we have covered requirements and specifications. Requirements and specifications are oftentimes referred to as the front end of the system development lifecycle. These are things that are happening at the front. In the front end of the system development lifecycle, our focus has been on understanding the problem, and that's mainly requirements, and also on determining what can serve as an effective solution. What would a good product that solves this problem look like and do? That's specifications. Our next job then is going to be design. The next major phase in the system development lifecycle. We have requirements, we have specifications, and then design. Design is usually considered the first step in the so-called back end of the system development lifecycle process. During design, conceptually, we move from idea to implementation. So design is really the first aspect of implementation. In spite of the fact that the design itself may be paper and pencil. That's a funny phrase, isn't it? Does anybody use paper and pencil anymore? But what I mean by that is it won't really be implemented in code or an actual product, but it will be designed manually, but that will ultimately be what the product does. How does it solve the problem? The operative word for the design phase is how. How is this ideal product that we envisioned that's going to ultimately solve that problem that we identified? How will it work? How will it function? How will it carry out the tasks necessary to solve the problem at hand? Design is hard. Design is messy. It doesn't look pretty at all. Sorry, I got to make one little note here, and this is a little funny to do on live coursecast. You'd think, well, isn't there a way to pause? There is, but all the pause does is just cut it off, but it keeps the timeline going, so there'd be a 20-second pause in here. Design is hard, design is messy. When you read a book, and I'm going to actually read a book to you a little bit today. When you look at a book, it looks orderly. Got chapters and it's all outlined and it all makes sense from beginning to end. And it looks like it was a very straightforward, linear, understandable process. Far from that. Nobody writes a book from chapter 1 to chapter 21 in order. It's a messy process. It takes a while to get it to be what you want it to be. Design is a creative process. You can't follow an algorithm. There's no step-by-step 12-point guide to developing a design. It's a creative process. That's going to take effort. And you know what? Sometimes people ask me, how do I get better at design? And the answer is, do design. Experience is a great help here. I showed you this book just a moment ago, and I got to see on the video which side I need to hold this on. Is that better? Can't see it there. Is that better? I need to move out a little bit. Here, there. Can you see the book? This is Fred Brooks, one of his later books called The Design of Design. Fred Brooks is a name, hopefully you remember for some other courses. Fred Brooks is really the grandfather of software engineering and what we do in IT as the system development life cycle. I want to read, believe it or not, just a little bit out of this book. I think it's too important to skip over. Chapter 1 is called The Design Question, and he has two quotes. I'll just read you the first one from Sir Francis Bacon. Historians, you may recall that many of us point to Sir Francis Bacon as the originator of the scientific method. Bacon was a committed Christian and really thought long and hard about how science can help him understand and get at God's world and God's creation. Here's a quote from Bacon. New ideas would come about by a connection and transferring of one observation of one art to the uses of another, when the experience of several mysteries shall fall under consideration of one man's mind. Bacon is talking about, good design is really a connection among many things. And I firmly believe that, and all of us who teach in our MSIT program too. That's why we love being at a liberal arts university where we focus on different aspects. Information technology is about solving problems for other people. If you're going to solve somebody else's problem, you have to understand their problem. And that's not an IT problem. That's what we call the problem domain or the user's domain. If you're creating an accounting package, you have to understand accounting. That's right. Is Bacon right? Sir Francis Bacon's hypothesis is our challenge. Are there invariant properties of the design process itself, properties that hold across a wide range of media of design? If so, it seems likely that designers in one medium could collectively grasp some of these principles more clearly than other designers, through struggles that are particularly difficult for that medium. Moreover, some media, such as buildings, have longer histories of both design and meta-design, the design of design. If all this is true, and if Bacon's conclusion is true, designers in different media can expect to learn new things about their own several crafts by comparing their experiences and insights. How does a composer or writer design? You might think that has nothing to do with IT, but you'd be wrong. We can learn a lot by investigating the design of a civil engineer or the design attributes of a philosopher and apply them to our own ideas here I hate this camera because it makes me look, my head's tilted all the time, but oh well, I'm just going to hold it straight. The camera's at kind of an angle and we're going to deal with it. What is design? The Oxford English Dictionary defines the verb design as to form a plan or scheme of, to arrange or conceive in the mind for later execution. The essentials of this definition are plan, in the mind, and later execution. Thus, a design, noun, is a created object. preliminary to and related to the thing being designed, but distinct from it. Dorothy Sayers, the English writer and dramatist, in her magnificent and thought-provoking book, The Mind of the Maker, breaks the creative process out further into three distinct aspects. You heard this from me before. I've shared this in other classes too. And initially it was Fred Brooks, one of his earlier writings, that alerted me to the writings of Dorothy Sayers. If you haven't seen her book or read her book, The Mind of the Maker, I highly recommend it. She calls them the idea, the energy, and the interaction. Actually, she calls it idea, energy, and power. I call it idea, implementation, and interaction. That is, 1, the formulation of the conceptual constructs. 2, implementation in real media. 3, interactivity with users in real uses. A book in this conception, or a computer, or a program, comes into existence first as an ideal construct, built outside time and space, but complete in essence in the mind of the author. It is implemented in time and space by pen, ink, paper, or by silicon and metal. The creation is complete when somebody reads the book, uses the computer, or runs the program, thereby interacting with the mind of the maker. In an earlier paper, I divided the tasks in building software into essence and accidents. This Aristotelian language is not to denigrate the accidental parts of software construction. In modern language, the terms would be more understandably essential and incidental. The part of software building I called essence is the mental crafting of the conceptual construct. The part I called accident, or incidental, is its implementation process. Interaction, Sayers' third step, occurs when the software is used. The design is thus the mental formulation, which Sayers calls the idea, and it can be complete before any realization is begun. Mozart's response to his father's inquiry about an opera due to the Duke in 3 weeks both stuns us and clarifies the concepts. So Mozart's father said, "Hey, you got 3 weeks to come up with this opera. Are you done yet?" And Mozart's reply was, "Everything has been composed, just not yet written down." You'll find authors that will use a similar twist. When asked, "Have you completed your book yet?" they'll say, "Oh, it's all done. I just haven't written it down yet." Idea, design, important. For most human makers of things, the incompleteness and inconsistencies of our ideas become clear only during implementation. Thus it is that writing, experimentation, working out are essential disciplines for the theoretician. The phases of idea, implementation, and interaction operate recursively. Implementation creates a space in which another cycle of design must be done. Thus Mozart implemented his opera idea with pen on paper. The conductor interacting with Mozart's creation conceived an idea of an interpretation, implemented with orchestra and singers, and the interaction with the audience completed the process. A design is a created object. Associated with it is a design process, which I shall call design without any article. Then there is the verb to design. The three senses are intimately related. I believe context will resolve ambiguity. Now, you don't have to read Brooks' book here, but I do recommend it. It's deep. At some points it seems a little disconnected from information technology, but it will really help clarify a number of things, especially after you spent time doing design. That's important also. Some of you will be designing a product. Others of you will be designing a process. It really doesn't matter. Think about design first in the mind and then actually commit it to something. And notice what Brooks said, it's an iterative process. When you are implementing, you will go back and think about it, the idea, the design, etc., and continue that. But that's why I said up front and early, do some stuff, make some stuff, implement some stuff right now. If you haven't implemented some aspects already just to test it out and get the cyclic process started, it's getting pretty late. Do something. Implement some things now. You'll have to go back in this cyclic process. So continue to work on your product. Every project, every product is different. It's possible that there's a better way to provide the information that I've asked for than how I've stated it in an assignment. If you feel that's true for you, negotiate with me. That'll be pretty easy to do. What I've suggested to do in an assignment is only a suggestion. Some projects are radically different than what I was thinking of. Not that mine is better. Yours are likely much better. But that's why, and some of you have already asked, well, how do I do a prototype here? Maybe you don't actually produce software. Maybe that's done in some other way. You know, one of the difficulties, and you've heard it on one of the course casts from last spring, and you'll hear it again too, is that one of the difficulties in communicating in a natural language like English or any other one is ambiguity. Words can take on multiple meanings, and without that shared context of the idea, when one person says something, somebody else can get a mistaken notion. Now, I have to share some of these with you. A friend of mine, Mark Armitage, sent me some, you've seen these things, actual headlines. Well, he cut them out of the physical newspaper, so they got to be true, right? Worker suffers leg pain after crane drops 800-pound ball on his head. Bridges help people cross rivers. City unsure why sewer smells. Study shows, too long. Man accused of killing lawyer receives a new attorney. Puerto Rican teen named Mistress of the Universe. Wish you could see these two. County to pay $250,000 to advertise its lack of funds. Army vehicle disappears. Australian Army vehicle worth $74,000 has gone missing after being painted with camouflage. Well, these headlines are funny, and you've seen other ones that are misleading and somewhat ambiguous. And that's the problem with the natural language. And that's why, if you haven't done so already, beginning with design, I want you to spend a significant amount of time producing diagrams and images. In addition to written prose, which is important, if you can have pictures, images, diagrams, that really helps improve the clarity of communication. It's a trite saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a diagram in the context of specifications and design is worth much. I want you to be sure that you view the Day 5 course casts from spring 2012 that you'll see online at Angel. Those will be important. And don't forget, I know when I initially said this, it may have seemed like a long time, but your project is due by the 31st of August 2012 at the latest. It's a little closer now. Time is marching along. We're going to be gathering like this over the next few weeks, but then I'm going to stop talking to you each week, and you're really going to have to work on this on your own. Now, I'm meeting with each of you. If I haven't met with you yet, I will be meeting with you very shortly. We all have appointments set up, and I'm happy to continue to do that. So if you need clarification, email me. If you feel it'd be more important to sit down and talk with me for a little bit of time, let's do that also. So keep working. August 31st is coming faster than any of us would like, but I'm really thankful for the work that you're putting forth, especially for those of you that are working on a project that's going to directly impact the CUW Computer Science and Information Technology Department. These look like great projects, and I'm excited to have these available to serve our students also. So thanks for coming along for the ride today. Hopefully the background didn't fritz out and I kept my head a little straight and I was in there and everything. If something's unclear on the CourseCast, ask about that too. Until next time, keep working.